Hello everyone and assalamu alaikum. This is Introduction to Psychology Part 1 and a request based video by Dear Knowledge. So since this is a request based video on factors affecting perception, which comes under the chapter 5, which is about perception, I have already completed the chapter 5 and I've compiled all those videos in one playlist for your ease. So if you haven't watched those videos, I have provided the link in description box. Go ahead, click on those links and watch those videos. I've also covered the topic which is related factors of perception, but since this was a request based video, so I decided to make a separate video on this topic and to make it a bit more detailed and in order to clear a concept. So let's start with our today's video, which is about factors affecting perception, in which we will be discussing about the psychological or internal factors, and we will be also discussing about the cultural factors, and in the end we will discuss about the objective factors and subjective factors, and we will also discuss about the reason why you don't easily find the topics like subjective and objective factors of perception and how it is related to attention. So let's discuss about the factors affecting perception. Now, one of the central assumptions of the constructivist approach to perception is that perception is not determined entirely by external stimuli. Now, as a consequence, it is assumed that emotional and motivational states, together with expectation and culture, may influence people's perceptual hypotheses and thus their visual perception. Now, this notion that perception is influenced by various factors is often referred to as perceptual set. Now, this is a perceptual bias or predisposition or readiness to perceive particular features of a stimuli. Now, basically, it is the tendency to perceive or notice some aspects of the available sense data and ignore others. Now, the factor that influence perception and create perceptual set will be discussed in this video. So let's start with the psychological or internal factors of perception. Perceptions are influenced by a whole range of factors relating to the individual. Now, these include cultural background and experience, individual differences in personality or intelligence, values, past experiences, motivation, which include both intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, and cognitive styles, emotional states, attention, perceptual set or readiness, prejudices, the context in which something is perceived, and the individual expectation. So we will be discussing all those terms one by one. Let's start with the attention. Now, there are powerful effects of attention on perception because perception depends on attention, and in the sense that it depends on attention in the sense that we see and hear clearly only those stimuli to which we pay attention. Now, for an event to be perceived, it must be focused upon or noticed, and attention is a general term referring to the selective aspects of perception, which functions so that at any instant an organism focuses on certain features of the environment to the relative exclusion of other features. Moreover, attention itself is selective, so that attending to one stimuli tends to inhibit or suppress the process of others. Attention may be conscious in that some stimulus elements are actively selected out of the total input, although by and large we are not explicitly aware of the factors which cause us to perceive only some small part of the total stimulus array. And the next factor is perceptual set or uh, readiness. Now, the cognitive and or emotional stance that is taken towards a stimulus array strongly affect what is perceived. And the tendency to perceive what we expect is called perceptual set. Now, readiness. to perceive the environment in a particular way is termed as perceptual set. The perceptual set means the mental set when the person is mentally prepared to perceive the certain features of the object in the environment. Perceptual set or readiness facilitates perception. And then the next topic is about motivation. Now, what is perceived is affected by one's motivational state. For example, hungry person sees food objects or items in ambiguous stimulus or stimuli, and um, two examples of motivational factors are hunger and thirst. Now, motivational factors increase the individual's sensitivity to those stimuli which he considers as relevant to the satisfaction of his needs in view of his past experience with them. And a thirsty individual has a perceptual set to seek a water fountain or hotel to quench his thirst, and now which increases for him likelihood of perceiving restaurant signs and decreases the likelihood of visualizing other objects at that moment in time. Now, a worker who has a strong need for affiliation when walks into a lunchroom, the table where several workers are sitting tends to be perceived, and the empty table or the table where one person is sitting will attract no attention. And one of the most popular, or one of the experiment which was done was about by Brunner and Goodman, and what they did is that they asked rich and poor children to estimate the sizes of coins, and the poor children overestimated the size of every coin more than the rich children. And another research and experiment which was done by Solly and Hayek in 1948, and they asked 4 to 8 years old to draw a picture of Father Christmas at intervals during the month before Christmas and the 2 weeks after Christmas. What they found is that as Christmas approached, the picture became larger, and so did Santa's sack of toys. And after Christmas, however, the toys shrank, and so did Santa. Now, this suggests that the motivation, which was higher before Christmas than after, it influenced that the children's perception of Santa and his toys, making them more salient before Christmas and after, and less salient after Christmas. And then Alport has distinguished 6 types of motivational emotional influences on perception. One of them is bodily needs, which include physiological needs, then rewards and punishment, and emotional connotation, individual values, personality, and the value of object. Then the next factor is about the cognitive style, which is another area where the individual show differences in their abilities to discriminate events or visual, auditory, or tactile cues from their surrounding environment is known as field dependence and field independence. Um, Cognitive styles also induced sets. Now, if we talk about the field dependence, now what field dependence is, a field dependent individual find it difficult to concentrate on an object, problem, or situation while ignoring distracting features of the surrounding context. And such person has difficulty finding a geometric shape that is embedded or hidden in a background with similar but not identical lines and shapes. Now, the conflict of conflicting patterns distract the person from identifying the figures, and such people are said to be interpersonal and have well developed ability to read social cues and to convey their own feelings. And then the next one is about field independence. A field independent person or individual views the world analytically and is able to concentrate on an object, problem, or situation without being distracted by its context. A person who is field independent can readily identify the geometric shape regardless of the background in which it is set, and such individuals who are field independent uses an internal frame of reference and can easily impose their own sense of order in a situation that is lacking structure. Now, they are also observed to function autonomously in social setting, and they're sometimes described as impersonal and task oriented. Now the next one is about values. Now our perception of others are strongly affected by our own experience and the attitudes in which in us that they create. If we are honest and inexperienced, what may be called innocent or naive by most, we will almost certainly presume honesty in most, and if not all, of those we encounter. Now, if we believe we are good, we presume everyone else is really good, and uh, by knowing honesty and integrity uh, within themselves, honest people have a far greater chance of recognizing it in others. Now, what we see in the environment is a function of what we value, our needs, or fear, and our emotions. Then the next one is about the needs. Biological needs and drives are primary motives of action, and when we need something we have an interest in it, and we are especially likely to perceive it. For example, hungry individuals are faster than others at seeing words related to hunger when the words are flashed briefly on a screen. Now, the classic study of Brunner and Goodman on value and needs as organizing factor in perception indicate that personally relevant subjects or objects in the perceptual field undergo accentuation. Now, this accentuation suggests that what is important for the person appears larger in his perception. However, Carton and scholars have not found similar result and have questioned whether this assumption is proved in all instances in which value is a prime factor in the situation. And then Charles and Egerton Osgood, from his experiment, concluded that our perception is influenced by immediate need and motives of the individual. Then the next slide is about beliefs, which is the next factor of perception, which is the psychological factor of perception. Now, what a person holds to be true about the world can affect the interpersonal, it can affect the interpretation of ambiguous sensory signals. Then the next one is about emotions. Now, emotion can also influence our interpretation of sensory information. Now, negative information, emotions such as anger, fear, sadness, or depression, jealousy, and so on can prolong and intensify a person's pain. And many researchers suggest that our emotional state will affect the way we perceive. For example, there is a term perceptual defense. Now, which refers to the effects of emotion on perception. Finding from a number of experiments shows that subliminally perceived words which evoke unpleasant emotion take longer to perceive at a conscious level than neutral words. It is almost as if our perceptual system is defending us against being upset or offended, and it does this by not perceiving something as quickly as it should be. And one of the experiment which done was on the perceptual defense was by presenting subject with 11 emotionally neutral words such as apple, broom, and glass, and then 7 emotionally arousing taboo words such as the negative type of words, and then each word was presented for increasingly long duration until it was named. Now there was a significantly higher recognition threshold for taboo words, and that it took longer for subjects to name taboo words. Now this suggested that perceptual defense was in operation and that it was causing alteration in perception. Then the next factor is about influence of expectation or context. or tendency to see, hear, or smell, or feel, or taste what we expect, or what is consistent with our preconceived notions of what makes sense. It has already been stressed that our previous experience often affect how we perceive the world because of our expectations. Now, tendency to perceive what we expect is called perceptual set, which we have already discussed. Um, Now, what happens in our expectations is that we read expectations can cause, when we read, for example, when we read, expectation can cause us to add an element that is missing. For example, if you look at here, um, at this example right here. Now, this is university becomes university. You add an element that is missing. Now, you also delete an element that is present. For example, hospital, if you look at the spelling, this becomes this automatically when you read. The double P is automatically deleted because on the basis of your expectations, because you expected it to be hospital. Then, or transposed or rearranged elements. For example, nervous becomes nervous because you add and rearrange an extra element, which is either missing or either deleted, or either you either delete it, or you either edit, or you either transpose or rearrange it. Then the next factor is the personality. Now, the personality of the perceiver as well as the stimulator has an impact on the perception process. And the age, gender, race, dress, and the like of both the person have a direct influence on the perception process. Then the next one is about the past experience. Philosophers over the centuries have speculated on the relative importance of innate or inborn factors and of learning in perception. And one extreme position was adopted by English philosopher John Locke, and he claimed that mind at birth is a tabula rasa, which means a blank slate or a blank tablet. Um, According to this view, perception is possible only after prolonged experience and learning, and the perception of stimulus or stimuli depends upon the pre-existing experience, which determines in what way and how the stimulus will be perceived. Then the next one is about the habits, and habits die hard, and therefore individuals perceive objects, situations, and conditions differently according to their habits. For example, a Hindu will bow and do namaskar, which is a type of paying obsequies when he sees a temple while walking on a road, because of his well-established habit. Now, there are also several instances in life setting where individuals tend to react with the right response to wrong signals. For example, a retired soldier may throw himself on the ground when he hears a sudden burst of a car tire. Then the next factor is about learning, and the state of learning influences and plays a crucial role in the perception process. However, it should be recognized that the role of learning is more pronounced in respect of complex form of perception, where the symbolic content creeps into the process. Although interrelated with the motivation and personality, learning may play the single biggest role in developing perceptual set and people perceive as per their level of learning, and it is therefore essential for any organization to make its employee knowledgeable and educated for their effective performance and behavior. And also the learning of managers and workers is a twin requirement. Then the next one is about organizational role and specialization. Modern organization values specialization. Now, consequently, the specialty of a person that casts him in a particular organizational role predisposes him to select certain stimuli and to disregard others. Thus, in a lengthy report, a departmental head will first notice the text relating to his department. Now, the next one is about the economic and social background. So these are all about the psychological or internal factors of perception, and this one is the last one, last but not least. Now, employee perception are based upon economic and social backgrounds, and socially and economically developed employees have a more positive attitude towards development rather than less developed employees. Then there is another term which is cultural factors. So we have completed all the factors that comes under the topic of psychological or internal factor. Now in next slides we will be discussing about the cultural factors. Now, discussing the cultural factors, our needs, beliefs, emotions, and expectations are all affected in turn by the culture we live in. And different culture give people practice with different emotions in different environments. And in a classic study which was done, researchers found that members of some African tribes were much less likely to be fooled by the Muller-Lye illusion and other geometric illusion than were the westerns. Now, different culture give people practice with different environments, and cultural aspects affect perception in many ways, like in shaping our stereotypes, directing our attention, and telling us what is important to notice and what is not. So we'll be discussing the cultural factor, the cultural background and experience, which is one of the factor of the cultural factors, and the prejudices, which is also another factor which comes under the factors of the cultural factor. So let's start with the cultural factor, the cultural background and experience. Now, perception is related to an individual's group membership and thus involves different cultural factors. And through socialization, an individual learns to perceive things in the context and reference of his own culture. So the same stimulus is perceived differently in different cultures, and prejudice have an effect upon perception. And prejudice can be a powerful influence, biasing the way we think about and act towards an ethnic minorities. And human beings are prone to errors and biases when perceiving themselves. Now, the type of biases people have depends on their personality, and many people suffer from self-enhancement bias. This is the tendency to overestimate your performance and capabilities, and to see yourself in a more positive light than others see us. Um, so, what happens in the cultural factors is when human beings perceive themselves as they are also subjected to the false consensus error. Simply put, overestimate how similar we are to other people. We assume that whatever quirks we have are shared by a larger number of people than in reality. Now, people who take office supplies home, they tell white lies to their boys or colleagues, or take credit from other people's work to get ahead, may generally feel that others' behaviors are more common than they really are. Now, the problem with behavior in an organization is that when people believe that behavior is common and normal, they may repeat the behavior more freely, and under some circumstances, this may lead to a high level of unethical or even illegal behaviors. And then how we perceive other people in our environment is also shaped by our biases, and moreover, how we perceive other will shape our behavior, which in turn will shape the behavior of the person we are interacting with. And one of the factors biasing our perception is stereotype, and a stereotype is the generalization which is based upon the characteristics. And the term, another term which is self-fulfilling prophecy, which comes under the topic of stereotypes, is when an established stereotype causes one to behave in a certain way, which leads other partly to behave in a way that confirms stereotype. For example, if you think that Asians are friendly, what you will do that you will start behaving nice with Asians, you will Asian people, you will start respecting them, and in return they will start behaving friendly, and you will think that Asian people are really friendly, and they are friendly. Okay, then the next one is about the selective perception, which means we pay selective attention to environment and we selectively perceive things. Now let's come to the objective factors of perception and the subjective factors of perception, and I'll be discussing these factors under the topic of attention too. So let's talk with the prepotency. Some stimuli are prepotent and intense enough to draw our perception more readily than those which are relatively weak or less potent. For example, a loud sound or bright light or strong smelling, etc. Then there is a term which is size. Size of the stimulus too has a potency to draw or to in order to get our perception, or we perceive larger sizes more as compared to the smaller one. Then there is a change. Living beings are usually sensitive to change, and change in stimulus may take any form from one place to another, or in one color to another, or sudden increase or decrease in intensities, atmospheric change, or appearance or disappearance. So such kind of change, we are more likely to perceive such kind of change. Then there's a repetition. When the objects or stimulus is continuously repeated, we are more likely to perceive that. Then there is a moment when you see a similar moment and you see one thing that is opposite to the other moments, or when you see any change in a moment, you will such kind of acts grab or perception. And because living beings are also sensitive to movement or motion, and such moving objects acquire the property of catching or perception. Now let's talk with the subjective factors. About the subjective factors include our motives and interest. Our perception also depends on our motives and our interest. The more we are interested in something, the more we are likely to perceive that thing. And I've already discussed all those terms in this video. So, for example, if a person is thirsty, he is more likely to perceive such places where their water is available, because it is based on his motive and it is also based on his interest. Then there is a set or expectancy, which we have discussed in this video. What you expect from something, you perceive it as it is, even though you delete some elements from it, you either add some elements or in it, or you even transpose it. Then there is a social suggestion. Your perception varies with social suggestion. For example, if you're buying a cloth and someone say this type of cloth is not a good quality cloth, if you buy that type of cloth or dress, this is a good quality, you are following this social suggestion, and ultimately you change your perception towards such kind of things. Now, this was all about today's video. If your concept is clear, you can like the video. If not, you can ask us in the comment section and we will be happy to help you out. Plus, if you're new to this channel, you can subscribe to our channel. You can subscribe to Dear Knowledge. You can click on the bell icon. So whenever we upload a video, you will never ever miss any notification. Plus, you can share the link of this video with your family members and friends, because sharing is caring. Until then, Allah Hafiz.